you have Lori Lightfoot out there. This is from The Hill. She's begging in a letter to Greg Abbott. She's begging Abbott to not send any more illegal entrants to Chicago. She said sending them to Chicago is inhumane and dangerous because Chicago is a crime-ridden hellhole. Because Chicago, you would more likely get shot by a gangbanger who's been caught and released a million times than you would a smile from someone. I mean, is that what you're talking about? I used to love Chicago. It used to be one of my favorite cities to go to. Catch live music in college, and then now it's like you can't. It's a totally different area. She's like, Chicago's a welcoming city, but no, he's trying to score political points. And she said that they can't receive people in a safe, orderly, and dignified way. Maybe because the city's neither safe, orderly, nor dignified. I just think it's funny that she says sending them to Chicago. Chicago's a sanctuary city. I thought you had all of these resources and activities. Well, you don't have those anymore? She said it's dangerous. He can't do it. It's mean. They don't have any more shelter spaces or resources. Oh, but the tiny little border towns on Texas border, Arizona border, all of these tiny little border towns that definitely don't have the population nor the resources, they're supposed to shoulder it all for you so that you can virtue signal about being a sanctuary while literally rejecting the act of providing sanctuary. You said you were a sanctuary city, so buck up. This is not the first time that she's begged him to stop sending people, but she's telling him again, please stop sending people to Chicago. She says, Abbott, this is not a state versus state or a city versus city problem. Okay, right there, I've got to stop her and say, you're wrong. Do you know why she's wrong? Because she has forced every other town to deal with this issue. I'll never forget the first time I went down to the border, I was at KURV, and I went down there with Glenn Beck, actually. And Glenn got a lot of heat because everyone was saying that he was like encouraging illegal immigration. And what they don't realize is that when he went down there, I went down there to kind of like talk so I could talk about it and watch everything that was happening. And his thing down there was it was being used by the Obama administration at the time. They would have these border towns overrun, and then the border towns would try to appeal for help. And then the Obama administration would use that. It was hurt and rescue. They would cause the problem, and then they would use that as a way to demand more funding to help facilitate illegal immigration. So that was like the whole topic. And even some of the flaccid Republicans who were too stupid to even understand what was going on, they didn't understand that that's what he was doing. I thought he got a lot of undeserved criticism from some pretty stupid places for that. And he went down there. He wrote a check to Border Patrol. I literally watched him write a bunch of zeros on a check myself watching it. Because Border Patrol, I can't tell you the amount of agents who were spending hundreds of dollars of their own money on things like toddlers would come across. And it would sometimes like for instance, the day before they had a 12-year-old bring a 6-month-old, they weren't even related across the border from a coyote. And obviously the 12-year-old, and they had no way to provide for the 6-month-old kid. So they had to get diapers. They had to get, baby, all this other stuff. They had to provide for the 12-year-old. And that was money that border agents were literally spending out of their own pockets. And the Obama administration was allowing this to happen and allowing it to get to this breaking point so that they then could go in and say, oh, we got to spend more on all of this illegal immigration. And then you had, and I got to be honest, there was one of the Catholic groups that was down there that was a far leftist Catholic group that was actually, helping the Obama administration do this. They got really mad at me when I asked about that, to the point where I got into an argument with one of the people and Ted Cruz had to separate us. So that's a real story. And they did not want that in the press, but, here I am. Because I feel like it's germane to all of this. That's how crazy it was down there. And he went down there to observe, too, because Glenn was like, people don't understand how bad it is. They were using this as a way to demand more money. And everyone's like, oh, Glenn Beck's going down there and giving, like, toys to illegal immigrants. What he was doing was covering the cost that Border Patrol agents were having to pay out of their own pocket and then showing people that they're purposefully overrunning these towns. So they would make it to where, and it begged the question as to whether or not certain officials were actually even coordinating things. You have to wonder, was there a coordination with cartels to expose certain areas to greater points of crossing, to overrun those areas, break them down so that there would be this larger move from the Obama administration to send more money to basically facilitate this and to keep it going. So, and by the way, that whole thing became the basis for their argument when they had the Flores Amendment, allowing kids to stay in, and then trying to demand that they process people through detention faster. And that's how you ended up losing hundreds of thousands of kids that were just dropped off by coyotes. And yes, there were families that took advantage of the Flores Amendment and would come in with kids so that they wouldn't get processed, or they would get processed faster, and they would lie about, whether or not a kid was theirs. But there were legitimate stories. I saw a video. I saw photographs from Border Patrol. They made fun of, Louis Gohmert, and they made fun of other lawmakers for talking about the rape tree, where cartels, the coyotes there was like this fabled tree where the story was that they would throw underwear of girls and women that they had violated on the tree as that is a real thing. Photos of it exist. And it's true that they would give younger girls birth control pills before even starting the journey up. And a lot of times these would be, the cartels were taking advantage of families and doing this. And Democrats were facilitating this by refusing to crack down at the border. As long as the border was open, they were going to take advantage of this. And so when we were down there, they had a couple of wealthier doctors in the area that set up, because they didn't want the ERs to be overrun. And they would set up these campers where they would go in and they would medically evaluate really the kids that were coming in, so that you didn't have ERs overrun, because these are tiny towns, right? And you're talking about hundreds and thousands of people coming across. So they were trying to do everything that they could to keep everything in working order. And he had gone down there to actually give money towards all of these things, all of these efforts. And it was wild to see this. When you're down there and you see, Bill Melugin has done such a great job of showing this, when you see how overrun it is, purposefully so, it really is, it's a jarring thing. Stunning isn't even the right word. When you see lines of people waiting under a bridge, and everyone there aren't even enough Border Patrol to stop anybody. They just march across. It's like you think there's a festival or something going on. That is stunning. And the administration allows for it to happen. And so Abbott, these towns are overrun. They can't hold people. They can't even, so he's doing what he can. Go send them to the sanctuary cities. Oh no, they don't want them. We don't have the resources. Now you tell me who has more resources and more wealth, Chicago or a tiny little border town on the Rio? Exactly.